school in 95. And I was in and out of junior college for a few years, and it's going nowhere. Dropped out 2-3 times, and was working at a hospice. And the hospice was on Lake Erie. It was at the end of East 185th Street. So you could look out onto the lake, and I worked the third shift, and I'd go out there, and I'd see, the ore ships and the cargo ships, and I'd think to myself, fuck, I'd rather be out there than here. Yeah. And I went down to the Coast Guard at the East 9th Pier, and I walked in, and I said, how do I get on one of those boats? And they, laughed at me and said, you gotta go to Toledo and fill out a bunch of fucking paperwork, and I don't fucking know, man. Get the fuck out of here. That kind of thing. Yeah. So that's really what I wanted to do, You read shit like The Sea Wolf. Yeah. I don't know how you read The Sea Wolf and want to go out to sea, but I did. Yeah. But it just didn't happen. So I wound up going into the Navy and volunteered for submarines, which really sucked and wasn't like any kind of sea service I'd imagined. I had an uncle who'd been on submarines, and I was weaned on his stories, and they were, they're pretty fantastic. Bar fights, people hitting each other over the head with monkey wrenches and going here and there. And
what was it like being on the sub? Was it like that?
No, it was incredibly lame. It was very regimented. And there was a set schedule for the type of submarines I was on, which were the ballistic missile submarines. And you go out for 3 months, 2 to 3 months, and then you're back for about 4 to 5 to refit. While you're in port, the opposite crew, the ballistic missile submarines have 2 crews of 150 sailors, the gold crew and blue crew, or blue and gold. Well, the blue crew is out with the boat. Yeah. You're on shore, training. Yeah. So I did that for 4 years, and was life on it like? Weird. Going 75 days without seeing sunlight, just kind of, talk about seasonal affective disorder. I mean, it's not even, there's no seasons. You're just, the atmosphere is controlled. They have a couple of different ways that they filter the atmosphere on a submarine. Yeah. One of them is they have this chemical compound called amine. I don't know what it's made out of. I just know that it cleans CO2 out of the atmosphere. It's you kind of breathing over the same air over and over again. But they also have an oxygen generator. And it's, what is it? Hydrolysis. They use water. They zap the water molecules apart. Split the hydrogen from the oxygen, I guess. Right. But anyway, this amine. When you're standing over the logistics escape trunk, your point of ingress and egress from a submarine, you feel the air coming out of it, the air conditioned air, the atmosphere coming in. You can smell this stuff, and it's really sweet, like sweet cooking meat, maybe. Yeah. And I remember, what the hell is this stuff, man? It smells so funny. And you do one patrol out to sea for like 60 days, 75 days, 85 days. Some guys stay out till, for 3 months straight. And when you would come back, the white undershirts that you would wear would be stained yellow from this amine. So
really?
You think to yourself, if it's doing this to my shirt, what the fuck is it doing to my lungs?
Right.
Poor respiratory system. But,
And so how'd you go from being on a submarine to being stationed in Kuwait? Which is where the story takes place, right?
Yeah. I got out of the Navy summer of 2002, and I knew I wanted to go into the Merchant Marines. I'd gotten a letter from an outfit that's part of the Department of Defense. They're attached to the Department of the Navy. They operate the logistic fleet for the Navy, and that company's called Military Sea Lift Command. Got a letter from them saying, hey, we know you're in the electronics field. We know you're getting out soon. How would you like to be a radioman? but I didn't. Anyway, I applied for the job. I got accepted. I didn't get the spot as a radioman, and I wound up signing on as an ordinary seaman, which is a deck department job, and it's an entry level position, and it's just maintenance of the ship. I started working for that company in December of '02. Got to my first ship in February. There was a little bit of training involved, and I did that for a year and a half, and it's like, well, I got this GI Bill. I may as well go to school. So I quit sailing, came here, and 6 months later I joined the Guard. Bounced around from a couple of different units, but 2007 I went to Fort Sam Houston, did my medical training, came back, and then 6 months later deployed to Kuwait.
Okay. And that was when you're in the Army now, right?
National Guard, yeah.
National Guard. Okay, cool. And so in the story, Two Dogs Fucking, the main character, who's a dog, refers back to another story that you had written in the past, right?
Yeah.
So was that just a device, or was there an actual story that you had written?
No, I'd written this totally shitty story about myself flying over to, or flying back from Kuwait at the end of the deployment, and it was semi-autobiographical, kind of like this story. I mean, some stuff I changed, but I didn't like it. I turned it into a class, read it. My classmates who read it didn't like it too much, and I didn't blame them. I didn't like it. I don't know. I thought I was trying too hard, trying to make something out of nothing, and then 6 months later, the lightning bolt. And I decided to wipe my ass with that previous story. And, do this. So it's self-deprecating. It's I was dealing with a lot of bitterness
at the time.
Yeah, just about the deployment, and a lot of self-loathing.
Yeah. So, did you start writing before you joined the military, or is that something you picked up while you were in?
No, I started reading stuff like the beat writers when I was, I think, the summer before my junior year of high school.
Yeah.
Jim Morrison, that kind of shit.
Right.
And, I mean, he's not a beat writer, but it was kind of like my gateway into that, and I started writing horrible poetry like him. Yeah. And that's what I did in high school, wrote a lot of poetry. And after high school, I don't know, I think I became so critical of where I was. I thought I was a real failure, that I couldn't get through college, and it was just this stupid fucking kid working at Blockbuster part-time and working at a hospice, and, the fuck do I have to write a poem about? That's how I felt. And I stopped it. I didn't write anything from probably 1997 till about 2003, 2004.
Wow, yeah. So you worked at a hospice, which is where people with cancer go to get
anybody with
a terminal
terminal illness. Yeah.
How was it working there?
It's funny. I was just talking about that in the movie theater with my friend. What a coincidence. Yeah. I was 20 years old at the time, and I don't think I had a concept of my own mortality yet. There were times that I was, afraid for my life, or afraid of an ass kicking as, a teenager or a kid. But seeing somebody laying on a gurney in a hospice when you're 20, they die of cancer. I'm not going to die of cancer. It just it never sunk in.
Really?
I don't know how I was just that unaffected by it.
Really?
I think looking back on it, I can appreciate the pain and suffering that their family members went through. But at 20 years old,
it just wasn't. Yeah. No, I could see that, definitely. Yeah.
It was. I don't know. Honestly, it was the person I was then, looking at dead bodies laying, on a gurney, not covered up, and seeing just. I remember this one guy had a massive cancerous tumor on his neck. and I'd never seen an unprepared corpse before. I'd been to a lot of funerals, and
Right.
that's pretty sanitized, His skin was gray. The tumor was just insane looking, and I would walk by, and then walk by, and walk by. And that sounds awful now.
Right, but you wanted to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think that the military sort of influenced your writing then? Or has it been something that's like separate?
It's definitely something I write about, and I seem to be unable to escape it. I think maybe I've written one story that I recall that doesn't have anything to do with the military, either with whether it's semi-autobiographical fiction or it's writing about some other characters, or even in first person from somebody else. It always seems
something
to be
about wars.
Yeah, well, maybe not necessarily. Not necessarily war, but definitely the military. I don't think the military has affected the way I write. I think the writers I read have more of an influence on my style and how I write.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So who are you reading? Who do you read?
I really like Tom Jones.
Tom Jones.
He wrote a novel or a collection of short stories called The Pugilist at Rest, and it won the O. Henry Award in 1993 when it was published, and it's fucking genius. Yeah. It's just
amazing.
Yeah,
Check it out.
A friend of mine called me one time, and he was sitting in a bar in Capitol Hill in Seattle, and he said he was reading this book, and he's like, it was in the Merchant Marines at the time. I was on a ship in New Jersey. He's like, next time you get into fucking New York City, dude, you got to hunt this book down. I did. The next time I got a 40-hour pass. I went into the city, went to the Strand, found a copy of it, and that's what made me want to write short stories. I finished that book, and I thought to myself, I want to write.
Yeah, you want to write. And so, like, where do you consider yourself to be, like, as far as... You write a lot about the military service. And so that... There's a lot of previous writers who have done, something similar. There's, like, war writers and stuff like that. Where do you consider yourself to be in that lineage of...
I couldn't tell you. Most of those guys writing have been in serious combat. I've never been in combat. I spent a couple of weeks working in a hospital in Afghanistan. So, we're in southern Afghanistan, Helmand Province. I was working at the Role 3 trauma facility at Camp Bastion, which was run by the British Army. So all of the casualties we had coming in were Marines who were in Helmand Province and the British who were in Helmand Province, and then to a lesser degree the Danes and the Estonians, and sometimes just Army personnel would come in. But so I can't compare my one tour in Kuwait with absolutely no combat exposure, and my second tour in Afghanistan with a little bit of the leftovers of combat too. James Jones, who wrote From Here to Eternity, fought through the Guadalcanal campaign, or Norman Mailer, who fought on Luzon in the Second World War, or
Gotcha.
Michael Hare, Dispatch.
And what do you think it is about those guys and like the military that brings out that type of artistic ability?
I don't think the military brings out artistic ability. I think you already have a desire to write and tell a story. Norman Mailer wrote a book called The Spooky Art: Thoughts on Writing, and he talks about working in a mental institution in between semesters at Harvard, and he was going to write this big book about these 5 days he spent working there, and he quit. And he said after that, he knew the draft was coming. He'd graduated from Harvard, and he knew deep down inside he wanted to write a novel about a long-range patrol. And he'd read Brown's A Walk in the Sun, which is about the army in Italy and a platoon going on a long march. And he wound up in a cavalry unit, and he volunteered for an intelligence and reconnaissance platoon, and he couldn't get out of it. Mm-hmm. And he did wind up going on a long-range patrol. But he said that what made him a good writer was getting himself into, or what made a good story was getting himself into something he couldn't just get out of. Mm-hmm. But I don't think the war made him a good writer. I think it just, gave him something to write about.
Okay. Yeah, so it's not like, because sometimes you think, like, when people are, suppressed in a certain way, and to a certain extent, the military might do that to some people, that when they feel that they have to express themselves, So you don't think there's any of that? Or at least not for you, maybe?
Not for me. I mean, I don't know what it's like for other people. As far as politics goes, I mean, on my first deployment, half my squad voted for President Obama, and the other half of us voted for McCain. Mm-hmm. So it's not that. I don't know how to answer that. I don't. Some people, I think most books about the military show kind of the worst aspects of it. Something like John Dos Passos' Three Soldiers. Really shows the army at its worst. But there's novels where people just or even memoirs that have been written where people just excel in it and they love it, mm-hmm. and it's
right.
It's the place where they always knew they should have been.
Where they feel like that. So, like, just to switch gears a little bit, maybe away from the military, what are your, like, ideal writing conditions? Like, when do you do your best writing? Like, under what circumstances? Or does it just come at any time?
A timeline. Yeah. I think I've always written better when I've got a hard time. When I've got a
deadline.
A deadline, breathing down my neck, mm-hmm. and I've got to turn something into, Professor Lyons.
Yeah, right.
And what the fuck am I going to write about? And then bam, it just comes to me. And, why can't it ever come to me when I don't know, I'm not under so much stress.
Yeah.
Procrastination.
So when you do write, when you have that deadline, do you have like a purpose in mind, or are you just kind of writing to write as a form of expression? Or
I've thought I always did my best when I knew what I wanted to write about, and if I could just find that first fucking perfect sentence that just cracks the seal and opens everything up, and that's really the hardest part, is just finding that sentence that opens everything up or sets you down the track to finish this story that you've had, bouncing around in your head,
And when you say first sentence, you mean the first sentence of the story, or that first sentence that triggers other stuff? And it might be in the middle, but it's the first sentence for you that triggers it.
I usually do better if I start at the beginning.
At the beginning?
If I start writing in the middle, I don't know. Then I get like
confused.
50 pages, and I don't know which one's
Yeah.
It's just me. Perfect, ideal conditions, I don't know. Maybe a beer or two to loosen up,
right,
and to not feel so self-critical. Definitely got to be alone. Maybe if I've got a song in my head, or if I hear a song, and I'll just play that song over and over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it might have nothing to do with the story I'm writing, and the lyrics might not have anything to do with the content of the story, but it's just like
something about it gets you creative. No, I know what you mean. All right, so towards the end of interviews, we like to ask just questions that that maybe Tony Quinn might want to know the answer to. So, what's the worst thing you've ever called anyone?
Yeah, I read that. I don't know.
Okay, I guess. What's the worst thing you ever called anyone? And then what's your favorite thing that you've ever called anyone? Or your favorite,
I don't know. Probably with the way things are now in the military, now that Don't Ask, Don't Tell has been repealed, a lot of the soldiers who are homosexual, they don't have to hide anymore.
Right.
So they're out, and I've had positive experiences. I shouldn't say positive experiences. I think a lot of guys expected that when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, I don't know, like the army would become some kind of Turkish bath or something like that.
Right.
It's not like that. You know?
Right.
The gay soldiers they're us. They are us. You know, they're not like us. They are us.
Yeah.
Faggot. It's probably, considering that I get along with all the gay soldiers that I've worked with. That's probably the meanest thing.
Okay. Yeah. It's a little darker than I thought. Yeah. Well, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So what's your favorite thing that you've ever called it? Like your favorite insult for a human being? Tony's is fuckwit. Tony likes fuckwit. Which I think is awesome.
I think maybe just calling a man a fucking cunt.
All right. Yeah. Okay, so, and maybe this will be like the last question or one of the last questions, but if you had to choose, you're on a desert island, you have a record player, you have to choose, and somehow a power source. It's solar powered, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, okay, so you have to choose 3 books and 2 records. What do you choose?
Jesus Christ.
That wasn't on the list. Yeah, sorry about that.
I should have had time for that one.
You can take some time to think about it. We could edit it.
You know? Yeah, okay. As far as records go, Forever Changes by Love. I'd say that's absolutely my favorite album, period. Yeah. A second album, I don't know, man. It could be 100 different ones. It could be one of 100, but as long as I had Forever Changes, I'd probably be all right. Yeah. And 3 books. The Pugilist at Rest. Yeah. From Here to Eternity. And that's hard.
Yeah, it's a tough question. We save the tough ones for last.
Yeah.
Tough ones are last. The hardball.
I don't know. Scratch that. You know what? Maybe I just have James Jones's World War II trilogy. From Here to Eternity, The Thin Red Line, and Whistle.
Okay, cool.
Very happy with those 3.
Nice. And so this will be the final question. What's your favorite word?
Favorite word?
Favorite word all time.
Hell, I don't know.
See, they're the tough ones.
Yeah,
tough ones at the end.
Probably buck, since I say it so
right.
much.
All right. Okay. All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
No
that was cool.
I wasn't talking too low, was I?
No, you're fine.
All right, cool.
You're totally okay.